Hello all, the Gaming Bard here, and today I've decided to do a video on Final Fantasy, Final Fantasy, Final Fantasy, Final Fantasy, and which one I think is the definitive version. Now, without boring you too long, I'll just cover the basics in both mechanics and presentation. I'm not going to go into every nitty-gritty little detail, otherwise I'd probably bore you all. And at the end of the video, I'll make my decision and tell you why. With no prior version to speak of, here's just a simple breakdown of what makes Final Fantasy, Final Fantasy. The basic plot is this. The world's gone downhill, and it's up to 4 heroes with 4 orbs to restore peace. More stuff happens, but that's the general gist. And who are those 4 heroes? Well, that's up to you to decide. You have a selection of 6 jobs to choose from. And yes, you can double, triple, and quadruple up any one of those. It might make the game harder, but sometimes harder is funner. And first up is the fighter, who, surprise surprise, is good at fighting. In fact, he is the best. His only real downside is the fact that he has limited equipment available in the game. Next up is the black belt, who is just about in every way second to the fighter, except he'll eventually supersede the fighter in damage with his fists. And then the thief, whose main skill is running, and nothing more. White mages are good at healing, killing the undead, and casting the exit spell to get out of a dungeon. Do I really need to say anything else? Black mages are good at killing things and getting killed themselves. The red, not gray, mage can cast a little bit of white magic, a little bit of black magic, and can decently use a sword. They start off great, but decline in usefulness as they get nothing good at the end of the game. And once you've made your 4 heroes, you're off to start the game, with nothing on and only 400 GP in your pocket. And buying that gear could be a little tricky. Sure, you know what kind of weapon it is, and for how much. But you won't know which ones are good, and who can use what, unless you look at the nice little chart that was provided to you with the instruction manual. Good luck if you still have that and in one piece. Thankfully, the internet saves us all. Spells are more or less the same, except they come with their own twist. You can only learn 3 out of the 4 possible spells of a certain school, and once you've learned one, you cannot unlearn it. And once you gain enough money to buy a lot of potions, I hope you have enough patience to buy each and every one at a single time. So with all that gear, you're ready to fight. And in case you didn't guess already, battles have their own problems. The first one you'll probably see is what's called the ineffective attack. When 2 of your characters attack one enemy, and the first one kills it, the second one will hit nothing and thus be ineffective. Later on, you may notice a few other things, like the fact that you can only use heal potions and pure potions. You cannot cure stone or death in battle. And that pretty much covers all the ins and outs about Final Fantasy. There's a few other nuances that don't affect the game, but I'll still mention, such as the invisible person, the tomb that has the name of one of the Dragon Warrior characters. Obviously, this one has a different translation from the rest, and a little bit of censorship that was in this game but was left alone in all the rest. So what would make this the definitive version of Final Fantasy? Well, it's the original. And while it may be the most difficult to get into, it is still very much playable, and it provides the most challenge out of all the other games. But while I can't speak for you, I certainly know for a fact that I do not enjoy being paralyzed to death. Now, the PlayStation version saw a lot of improvements in its presentation, along with some features that are now commonplace in a lot of games. The first feature is to choose the difficulty setting between original and easy. Original is obviously like the original. Easy mode has a lowered experience requirement. Items are cheaper in shops, and not only does your magic progress a lot faster, but it also supersedes the limit of 9. But other than that, they both share the same added features, such as the ability to dash, move faster in dungeons and towns. You can also turn off and on the ineffective attack, and you also have the choice of being able to use all restorative items and spells in battle. Of course, there were a few features that were put in that you can't turn on and off that weren't in the game, such as your generalized items list. That's all one thing now. But I really can't argue against the inclusion of the descriptions of your items, weapons, armors, and spells. And speaking of spells, they actually allow you to forget spells and relearn them if you so choose. Potions healed at a certain range between, 14 and 32 instead of the consistent 30. But extra features aside, you were still playing the same game, except with better graphics, better music, and fixed bugs. The bosses had more HP and also the quick save, which pretty much allowed you to save any place except in battle. And you could pretty much reload that at any time as long as you had the system running. But once you turned it off, it was gone. The character jobs are more or less the same, except for a few tweaks. One, now that they fixed the bugs, the thief can actually have a better success at running than other people. The monk also received an improvement to his natural defense boost. Instead of getting a generic boost whenever he gains a level, it'll kick in whenever a piece of equipment is removed from his body. While there aren't too many changes in the translation, I'll still point out a few alterations, such as the fighter to the warrior, the black belt to the monk. Harm is now called Dia. The clinic is a church, and Garland no longer knocks you all down. But other than that, the story pretty much stays exactly the same. 4 heroes go out and restore the power of the crystals, not orbs, by killing things. The only other real differences is the fact that the invisible person is completely gone. There's a chancellor who does absolutely nothing. The tombstone now references Link instead of Eldrick. The dancer no longer has a name, and you don't see credits near the beginning of the game. Now, the only other things that I haven't really covered are the bestiary, the art gallery, and the item collection list. Now, the item collection list I think is pretty self-explanatory. The bestiary and art gallery would slowly unlock as you defeated monsters. The bestiary, as you defeated that monster, you got its stats. The art gallery was somewhat a bit more independent, and I really never bothered to check into how it did it. Just know that as long as you defeat all the enemies, you'd get the whole art gallery. I would say the plus side of this version is the fact that it's the most accessible. Sure, it's on the PlayStation, but as many people probably know, you can play it on the PS2 as well as the PS3 with little problems. Even though most of these new features were optional, some of them were not, preventing you from playing the game as it originally was with the better presentation. It also doesn't exactly play like the newer versions either. It is its own hybrid that doesn't really fit with either side. And to be perfectly honest, that's pretty much the negative. This version doesn't cater to either type of player. The one that prefers playing the original, or the ones that are more used to the more modern gaming mechanics.